3, 2, 1.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. It's great to have you all. We're here with the FourthBrain team, and I am Salwa Noor Muhammad. I'm the founder and CEO of FourthBrain, and I'm here today with our alums as well as with our instructional team, the lead instructor, and we're going to talk a little bit about the machine learning engineering program and kind of answer your questions. So I hope you're excited to be with us. I am actually going to, give me 1 second, try to share my screen one more time. Let's get back to it. Okay, great. So first off, to introduce the panelists that you're going to hear from today, we have Justin Barber, we have Bashar and Efinwande, and then you will also hear from Sarfraz Hussain, who is going to be the lead instructor for this upcoming cohort for machine learning. Justin, Bashar, and Efinwande actually just graduated this past Saturday, which was very exciting. And you can ask them questions. We're going to be taking questions both from the YouTube channel. If you put them in the chat box, we have staff manning that, as well as I'm going to be kind of picking those out towards the end. And they have excellent profiles and excellent backgrounds from across the board. Justin actually just started or is starting a role as a senior machine learning engineer in a radiology company. Bashar has been in the field for quite some time in data and then machine learning, and I'm working at Lam Research right now. Efinwande is a physicist turned data nerd, self-proclaimed physicist turned data nerd, has been doing quite a bit of this both when in her academic work as in her PhD, as well as kind of transferring some of the practical work into this as well. So before we kind of get into the panels, let me start off a little bit with our slides. So I wanted to give you a little bit of the history of what FourthBrain is, how we came about, and what our goal really is here. So our larger mission for FourthBrain has been to bring more and more people into AI and machine learning careers. So when we started off about a year ago, right around actually when California went into shelter in place. So we kind of coincided with COVID and lockdown. One of the things that we did see is there were a lot of people who were getting furloughed or losing roles. And meanwhile, in this particular area, we were also seeing very high growth in jobs. It was about 29% year over year. So we wanted to see that there are a lot of resources out there that do really good teaching in the machine learning field, and a lot of companies that are trying to apply this, but there was still this gap between employers trying to hire and also students or graduates, alums kind of getting into these roles. So in our conversations with employers, what we did find is that last mile of being able to deploy the models, and then the skills around being able to communicate what you're working on, be able to work in collaborative groups were super important for someone to hit the ground running. So we really focused on those when developing this program. We'll get into that when Sarfraz gets to talk about the curriculum some more. And then the other thing we are going to be doing, we also did, was really look at the program structure. So if this is a hybrid program, what that means is it takes into account, we do once a week, you have live instruction with the instructor. And for the rest of the week, you actually spend about 10 to 15 hours on your own time. So you get the flexibility of online and the accountability of live instruction. But it's scaffolded with office hours, with groups. And then you also get to work on group projects, which is really an important part of this, and really see the applications of what you're learning. This particular program is 16 weeks long. And that's the tuition amount that's on our screen right now. So with that, I'm going to actually hand it over to Sarfraz, and I will, towards the end, talk a little bit more about the program structure before introducing the panel. Sarfraz, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this info session of FourthBrain. I am Sarfraz Hussain. I have been associated with machine learning, computer data science for almost about a decade. I did my doctorate in computer vision, machine learning, deep learning from the US. Have been actually doing research associated with a range of applications ranging from pure computer vision, which is object detection, image classification, object tracking, medical image analysis, cybersecurity, e-commerce, and those sorts of things. So I'm very passionate and excited, and let's see what do we have in the curriculum. Next. So our curriculum is actually a hybrid program structure, which offers you an opportunity to be both flexible and accountable. We have online video lectures and assignments, which you have a week to actually look and watch, and then discuss among yourselves, come up with some questions and those sorts of things. I think we lost the slides.
Sorry, I did something weird here. You could keep talking. I'm going to bring the slides back in a second. Sorry about that.
It's a hybrid structure where you will actually get an opportunity to watch the videos and discuss, think about potential questions. And then once we meet either in the middle of the week or on the weekend, which is Saturday, we'll go through some challenging questions which you have encountered while watching the course material and the videos. And then we are going to talk about what can be done, and we'll answer your questions. And then you will have an opportunity to work on assignments, like live in-class assignments that are relevant to the topic of that particular week. So you have, can you go to the previous slide, please?
Previous slide, okay. There's a little bit of a lag, yeah.
Okay, so yeah. So, and then it is designed in a way that you have like both individual and group projects. The data models and the assignments and projects you are work on actually scalable. So we actually focus on both end-to-end, where you actually start from data cleaning and all the way to the deployment of the model. We do also have industry-sponsored projects in the later half of the class, which is actually a capstone project, and which gives you an opportunity to work on something which is relevant and related to the industry itself. And those actually range from variety of topics, ranging from computer vision, NLP, and so forth. And then you have transfer learning across different data sets, and you make deployable pipelines. And as I said, a very important focus of this course is actually the deployment. We don't only focus on the theory part of it, but practical assignments, as well as ultimately the deployment of the model itself. Thank you. Next slide. So in order to be prepared for a machine learning role, as Selva mentioned, it is a very promising career opportunity. You need to have like some practical knowledge of latest frameworks, and the frameworks and platform which you primarily use is Python as far as coding is concerned, and TensorFlow as far as deep learning platform is concerned. The big data part of it includes Sparks and Databricks, and the deployment includes Flask, Fast API, and those sorts of things. The MLOps part includes Google Cloud, AWS, and Microsoft Azure, which are actually the very popular frameworks which we actually use. There is a lot of opportunity in terms of AutoML. So we have like Teapot, Google, GCP, SageMaker, AutoGluon, and those sorts of things. And then finally, you have the pipeline solutions, including Kubeflow and MLflow. Yeah, next slide. So the curriculum is divided into two parts. The part one is actually your individual learning, where you actually focus on the theoretical part of it, as well as to develop machine learning models and concepts. And we start from very fundamental and go towards the advanced levels. And those topics actually primarily includes basic fundamentals of machine learning models. And then we move on towards deep learning, and then use computer vision and image processing. Generative adversarial networks are actually very promising area where you can actually generate realistically looking data samples. And then you have the time sequence modeling, which we'll be focusing as well. There are weekly projects to solidify the concept which we have learned throughout in the class group sessions, and that will give you an opportunity to further practice what you have learned. And then the part two is the group capstone project, and the capstone project actually gives you an opportunity not only to focus on the scalability of your model and deployment, as well as gives you an opportunity to work within a team, and that would be very related to what you'll experience in an industry where you have a project and you have a few people you are working with. So that actually gives you a collaborative aspect of working on projects as well. And then the deployment part include, as I said, Flask, Fast API, and then AutoML is another concept which we'll be focusing as well. And if you want to recommend your own project or actually get help from the instructor to come up with a capstone project, that is also another option which you can explore.
Great, thank you. Before I actually jump into the career services section, there is one question that came in that's very relevant. What percentage of the curriculum is dedicated to topics other than deep learning?
So I think it is, do you want me to answer? Or?
Yeah, let's answer that.
Okay. I think it's because deep learning is primarily a very important part of machine learning currently. And it includes both in terms of computer vision, NLP, and those sorts of things. So generally the first few weeks, like first 5 weeks or so, 4 or 5 weeks, it's like non-deep learning stuff. So we build upon basic machine learning stuff, which includes supervised learning, semi-supervised learning, self-supervised learning, unsupervised learning. And then from there on, we actually ramp up towards deep learning and proceed from there on. So yeah, we make sure you have the fundamentals taken care of before we move on to the deep learning.
Great. Makes sense. Thank you. So going into career services, like I mentioned, what we sort of see with our students that come in, and we actually like to call them candidates to kind of emphasize the job search process. People come in for either upskilling in their current jobs or getting promotions or just getting more interesting projects in their jobs. They come in to enter the field of machine learning. As we know, about 60% of software developers are generally interested in machine learning. There are folks who come from other paths as well. We get entrepreneurs, we get people who are very interested in continued learning. We have students who are actually graduating from this program that are coming back for our other program in MLOps, which is not new to this community, right? Like continuous learning and lifelong learning is very much part of the fabric. And in some ways, we kind of look at this as this program, even though it feels like the one that's preparing you for that machine learning engineering role. If you were to come back in a year or two, it would probably look different because we're constantly iterating based on the feedback we get. That's based on where the field is and how it's evolving. So with all that said, we do have very explicit career services curriculum that's kind of ingrained or woven throughout the entire program. So it's not like you do it at the end. It's very much by week. And we see ourselves in the role of facilitator between employers who are actually the hiring managers, and we build those partnerships to be able to help the candidates and have them benefit from those experiences. So our hiring partners and companies that we collaborate with, they will do everything from being guest speaking sessions. So they'll come in, kind of do like a session with you, and then they will also do things like mock interviews. Informational interviews is something we help you set up, as well as kind of teach you how to do that to build that networking. And then the group project or individual projects that Sarfraz was talking about is an excellent way for our partners to also get to know you. So one of the things they'll do is you can come in with an idea for your own project, develop one while you're in class with peers, or there are sometimes companies who will come in and say they'll sponsor a project where they give you the idea for the project, and then you work on an actual application with them. So Samsung has been a great partner that has sponsored projects. Sprout, Group by Ibarra, Spotify. We've had multiple companies that have done this over the course of our programs. And as these guys kind of test to it, when we have the project presentation day, which we just had this past Saturday, companies will come in, watch those presentations, and literally, like we got an email today from a company saying, we want to follow up with the candidates that just did this. We would like access to their resume, LinkedIn, presentation, GitHub, all of that. So they literally hone in on the group that's been working with them. It's an excellent way to get to know candidates throughout a 16-week program, or at least half of it, rather than through a one-shot, 1 week or 2 week, 1 hour or 2 hour interview as interviews go. So that's how we kind of involve employers throughout this. They also end up doing quite a bit of feedback. Like we do run our curriculum through employers to make sure, because we're kind of building it for them, that we make sure they give us feedback along the way as well. So with that, I am actually going to bring the panel on so we can kind of start asking questions before I move into the next section, which is the how I join. But I think that part can come later. So Justin here, as I was mentioning, has a background in humanities. He actually has 2 degrees, in one of them in classics, and has taught ancient Greek in the past, which is fascinating. And I love reading your description, Justin, about how you got interested in programming while you were working on your doctorate, which I assume is in one of the classics, right? And joined the digital humanities movement. So even though you're starting to work as a senior machine learning scientist at Red Partners in a week or so, it's a fascinating journey. So I'm sure you'll get a lot of this. We see such a diverse background in our cohorts that we as FourthBrain staff are often very surprised and really pleasantly surprised at how well this goes. And then Bashar has worked in the tech industry in a variety of roles, everywhere from being an engineer, project manager, and most recently as a systems analyst focusing on business planning. His background is also in mechanical engineering as well as computational science. Very nice to see you again, Bashar. I was reminiscing with the group about their graduation and their presentations. And then F1 who's a physicist, has a broad experience in quantitative analysis, machine learning, and deep learning. Her PhD was in the area of theoretical particle physics and the subject of exotic neutrino models for dark matter. So in your day-to-day, you're building, I know, high predictive models in Python and Apache Spark. And then right now also working on reinforcement learning strategies in the marketing tech space. So quite a bit, like going all the way from dark matter into marketing tech. And right now working on models to drive positive incremental customer behavior in a way that keeps customers both engaged and satisfied. So as we get into questions, maybe I think I'll start off with one just because I'm really fascinated. F1 how would you compare what you were doing in, let's say, whether it was your academic work or past roles, involving the quantitative analysis in a very different theoretical particle physics implementation to what you're doing now, which is very customer facing and possibly immediate gratification, right? And I'm guessing you get to see more results. Like, how do you kind of see that range? Is one more interesting over the other? I don't want to like put them against each other, but like, what's the range of experience there?
Yeah, so hello everyone, I'm here from Wendy. Yeah, so I would say the difference is really the issues, the business impact. In one role, there is really no business impact. You're just you're doing things for curiosity's sake and you're like trying to learn. And then there is that aspect of just getting deep into like the research or like trying to drive knowledge forward. And then there's the other end in which is in the business inspector, you're trying to figure out like how to make the business grow, how to satisfy customers. So it's kind of a little bit more immediate feedback. It's a bit more real, and that's probably how I would just define it.
Great. And then Justin, I might ask you a question as well. I know you mentioned, or I just in your bio read about how you got interested in programming. Tell us a little bit about how you stay involved still in the humanities, because I think there's definitely applications of how you think about it there. And then also what led to not just programming, you went all the way into machine learning. Like that progression happened pretty quickly from what I can tell.
Yeah, those are great questions. So I was really interested in language a lot of times. Sorry for my voice, I have a little bit of a cold, but I was interested in language, from quite a while ago. And I realized that computer programming can actually do quite a bit with language. But when I started looking at the machine learning atmosphere, I realized a lot more can be done with language than I actually was able to accomplish with just programming alone. Mm-hmm. So I began to explore that in the digital humanities space, and really, I guess in some ways with my team, looking at machines as partners with human beings to be able to dialogue back and forth with them. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's how I sort of, became more interested in this space. And where I'm going, I'm actually going to be applying that to things like radiology reports and things like that.
Excellent. And then Bashar, for you, I wanted to ask a little bit about you've been in the tech industry for a long time, but your roles are quite varied, everything from project management to now systems analyst, engineer. You also did mechanical engineering. So tell us a little bit about that progression. Like what motivated you from something like mechanical engineering into completely software cloud, as abstract as it can get probably to some degree in machine learning?
So the thing is, I think I probably fell in love with computers back in the days when I was a kid. My dad got us our first Commodore 64, and I just fell in love with programming. And then, as you kind of go through high school, everybody tells you got to know computers. Now, what I didn't know is that what they meant by computers is learn how to use them in the job. So I always learned programming on the side. And when I finished my mechanical engineering degree, I showed up at the job like doing mechanical engineering work, and then they needed somebody to write a bit of code, and I wrote it, and they were impressed. So it just kind of advanced my career and just kind of stayed with this kind of technical field. And at some point, wanted to learn more about, the business, because we were very good technical people. So I kind of did project management. And in a way that led me more into, but I always loved the technical stuff. Like I'd always kind of drawn back to it. And I think that's when I had an opportunity to be a system analyst, which is a more technical role. Ended up jumping on that, and that's where I am.
Nice. Great. So now I have a question for Sarfraz. This is around curriculum. What frameworks do you teach that move data through a pipeline?
And move data to a pipeline?
Through a pipeline.
Yeah. I think primarily, we generally, as far as deep learning frameworks are concerned, we use TensorFlow primarily, but once you learn the framework, it is easily actually, you can actually move across. We generally, as far as pipeline is concerned, computational pipeline is concerned, we have GCP and AWS resources meant for it. For the environment, as I said, we actually work on Flask, Elastic Beanstalk, and those sorts of things.
There's some excellent questions coming through. So here's one I can start, and then maybe Sarfraz or someone who's done this can address it as well. What's the overlap with the deep learning specialization from Coursera? So we have an exclusive kind of agreement with deeplearning.ai. So we do use some of their content in our curated content that you go through, not during the live sessions, but it's not just that. So we leverage some of it. A lot of our students have actually taken courses from deep learning before, or been in boot camps or other online courses. But this is really meant with that idea of like, if you want something very intense, very kind of focused, and like specifically on these roles and meant for jobs, it is a differently structured program and different content too. So when we do curated content, it's content we create ourselves. It's also content that, like I said, from deep learning or elsewhere. So it's not a entire, there's pieces of that's incorporated, but not entirely. But I'll let Sarfraz or anybody else who has experience with the deep learning specialization from Coursera speak to it too, if you would like.
No, I think I don't have anything to add.
All right, then the next one, this is a great question. And Justin, I might actually throw this at you since you just had experience with our career services. How do you prepare students for job interviews? Do you provide any commonly asked questions in terms of practice? It's not one-dimensional because so many companies have different processes for how they get hired, right? So that's why we try to equip you with as much practical knowledge when it comes to doing the projects, as well as throughout the program. Like you get practice on things like the communication piece, right? Like we treat our project sessions almost as stand-ups. So you get an experience of what that's going to be like in the real world when you're working with cross-functional teams that include engineering as well as product and others. So it's not just a set of practice questions. We can definitely do that. I think we have done it at certain times, but it's not just to give you a set of practice questions and that's it, we're done, like that's your prep. But I'll let Justin speak to kind of how personalized that experience is.
Sure. I think we had also some kind of subscription that helped us interact with people in an interview type context so we could practice. Mm-hmm. And then we also were able to work a lot with preparing for the interviews. I guess we shared a lot of resources together, and Miriam was just super helpful throughout this whole process. In fact, as soon as I had sort of, aligned GitHub and LinkedIn and things like that, all kinds of emails and inquiries started coming into me through LinkedIn. And it was just, it was amazing to see how fast it happened. But in terms of the interview process, I felt very prepared in terms of what we had covered in class and just reviewing those sorts of things. And then also following the leads that Miriam gave us to sort of explore the other kinds of questions that might be asked and so
on. Right, so it's both like the profile review of whether it's LinkedIn, resume, GitHub, like those obviously exist, but it also tends to be very much customized based on, like I see a lot of pings when candidates get interviews coming for career services saying, I have such and such interview. Sometimes it starts happening before the course even starts to some degree. We have folks who get roles midway through. They still continue the program. We do get questions around like, oh, they have jobs now, they're not going to finish the program. But as you guys all know, this is not a one-time like snapshot investment, right? For in your career, in your learning, these kind of pay off over time. So people definitely complete that. And okay, so here's another question that came in. This is an excellent question because I think this is a misconception that exists when you're in these programs. Do we have to be software engineers to succeed in the program?
No.
No, short answer is no. Yes,
I definitely, I'm not a software engineer. Yes, I'm a technical person, and I guess I've coded on the side, just for my personal stuff, but I'd consider more like scripting. It's not an official software engineer, but having those skills would help, absolutely. But are they a must? No, you're going to learn a lot. I learned a lot just from those 16 weeks, but I don't think you need it to succeed in this course. You probably need the right attitude. I think that's the most important thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, like there is, and if you're curious, like I encourage you when you apply, if you haven't already, you're going to get an assessment that takes you through this short kind of quiz that tells you whether you have the kind of coding skills required for this program. We say approximately 2 years, but that's really arbitrary because some people gain that level like way earlier than that. Some take longer. It depends on how much time you put in. So I highly encourage you when you apply to take that assessment that will tell you whether you have the prerequisites for the course. Let's see what else. The projects can be done by PyTorch or only TensorFlow?
Either one.
Either one.
It depends on for the weekly projects, the homework would tell you it's specific, but for the end project.
The capstone is pretty open-ended. Okay. So, and here's another question along those lines. So there are no frameworks for managing data and processing pipelines that go beyond TensorFlow or a single deployment. Is a custom Python and Bash programming then? It's a little cut off.
Yeah, does not seem so clear to me. Yeah, I think as far as pipeline, one other aspect is the storage part of it, where the data is stored and those sorts of. So yeah, those are for AWS. There are S3 buckets for GCP. There are Google Cloud where you can actually store. So there, the end-to-end pipeline does involve from storing the data, pre-processing it, computing it, and then all the way to the ultimate deployment part.
What companies were your previous cohorts hired in? Excellent question. And I should have had a list in front of me. Off the top of my head, folks, the most have gone into Amazon and AWS. There are people who have been hired into Intel, IBM, McDonald, what are the other ones? Spotify, Headspace. These are the ones that are just coming off the top of my head, all sorts of companies. Obviously, Justin's company, Radiology Partners as well. So there's a variation of, they tend to be like what's common amongst them is they're all machine learning roles, but they can vary everywhere from consulting companies all the way to very technical companies and all sizes, everything from like startup to large companies. This is a really good question. Is it possible for work to be working full-time and be taking this course? As in, can full-time professionals take this course?
I would say yes. You're going to need just to be very smart about how you do your time. I've even got a wife and a kid, so that even takes a bigger toll. But you just need to be very structured about how you dedicate the time. So for me, it's always like I had my hours at night that I used to study. Sometimes if I woke up early and I had free time, I would use it. Lunchtime was always, I'd at least use half an hour to study. I mean, you got to really take it seriously. But I think if you do, you really do reap the rewards. I wouldn't skip the homework where you got the self-study piece, because I think that's very critical to come to the Saturday class. And I think until week 14 or 15, I always came already finished the material. So kind of like you participate a lot better. I didn't fall behind until the very end just because of the capstone project, but it is definitely doable. You just need to manage your time and take it seriously.
Right.
And don't judge it by week 0. Week 0 is too easy. So don't think that it's going to be a breeze.
That's why it's called week 0. 0 has no homework, it's orientation. We've debated internally whether it should be called 0 or not, but it is really setting expectations, right? So you have your full day of class. If you're in a Saturday session, it tends to be 9 to 3 p.m. You could be in a weekday session and then you're split, but it's like 6 to 7 hours of live sessions. And then you have another 10 to 15 hours of work on your own with office hours, so that's kind of the approximate we put in. But of course, there are people who spend way more, people who spend less. But it is intense. It is 16 weeks of intense work. Like Bashar said, you really can't slack off because there's very little time to catch up. But this was also intentional where I'm very aware of like you are giving up if you're in a weekday or even or a weekend, like you're giving up certain days of the week, right, for 16 weeks. So it has to have like a cap there when you're done. But so it can be intense. But with, like if you have a can-do attitude and you come into this knowing what you want out of the program, people do finish and they are successful in doing that. So that's definitely part of it. All right. Let's see. I think that answered the how many hours per week does it take for students question, hopefully. What is the AWS GCP budget for students? So first, I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, but it is included in your tuition. So whatever AWS, like there's obviously allocations. So we allocate that per student per homework, but it's included and you don't have to go get AWS credits outside of this.
Right. Yeah, I think we have a combined budget for the whole class and then it is distributed.
Right. Then let's see. Oh, these are some interesting questions. Is the Slack channel very active? Are instructors available, responsive outside of Saturday or office hours?
In my experience, yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, the Slack channel is very active.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed that too. I don't want to like jump in here, but I do have it on my phone. But I will say, like, what was really nice to hear over the graduation ceremony is students also kind of like giving accolades to classmates or peers who jumped in even outside of the instructional team and answering questions. The team has office hours distributed throughout the week because we have students from all over, like every time zone, we try to do that. So it's not just weekends and classes, there's like additional hours. And then if that doesn't meet, we highly encourage people to say that, you know, this falls within my work hours, I need additional hours, and we're happy to like kind of adjust that. That's definitely part of it. Then let's see. How long after cohorts graduated did they typically receive job offers? Would we apply for jobs during the 16-week program itself? I think some of you can probably attest to this, but yes, students do apply or candidates do apply to jobs while in the program, at least from what I've seen. There isn't a specific, I wouldn't give you a typical job offer like you meet this day and that's it, because it's so heavily influenced by what people want to do, when they want to do it. I have seen folks really hold out for the right job rather than just the job right after like the graduation day. In our estimate, we do provide career services right now for up to 6 months after graduation. That could change. I mean, that could go longer. We haven't actually turned anyone away. But because of the number of courses that are in there, we don't have exact data to share just yet. But anything you guys want to add in terms of applying during, after? I know you guys just graduated.
That's been my experience as well. And I mean, a lot of my classmates, I think, sort of waited a little bit just to see when they wanted to dive into the market. Mm-hmm. But when they decided they wanted to, then, you know, pretty quickly you start getting feedback. And in my experience, I mean, as soon as I was available and interested, the offer, I mean, not the offers, but the the interview offers were coming in. And I went through a couple of those and then eventually you get an offer within like maybe 3 to 5 weeks to months sometimes, depending on how fast the company is moving.
Do you offer job guarantee after completing the program? We don't. And I'll tell you why. I've been in EdTech for quite some time right now, and I've seen it be offered, not be offered. In my experience, when you offer a guarantee like that, it usually comes with all these stipulations that candidates have to complete. So things like You have to send out a certain number of applications every week. You have to do this or that. And then if you don't do it, you fall off the guarantee part. It can get convoluted really fast, really quickly. There are programs out there that do offer it. There are pros and cons. Weighing all of that in, we wanted to be able to help students where they're at when they need it, rather than hold this over them and try to turn this into a formula. As we all know, like, it's not that much of a formula. So the short answer is, like, we don't offer a job guarantee. Could someone briefly elaborate what kind of topics are covered under system design, as was mentioned in the slides previously?
So system design primarily involves, so given a project, for instance, or an assignment where you actually are working on it, what are the potential steps and what does each of those entail? For instance, what would be the storage part look like? How would your input data look like? What are the steps where you go on from pre-processing input data to make it in a form that is computable by your model? How you're going to house your model, how you're going to actually spit out the output, where are you going to store the output? Is there any feedback involved in those sorts of things? So you will design a system design diagram in a way, given a potential project which you are actually working on. So as to communicate to your stakeholders, for example, maybe if you are actually in a job or working in a company, how would it actually look like as far as the complete system is concerned, all the way from, as I said, input to output, any potential feedback loops involved. Yeah.
Okay, great. How are you combining the open source tools and cloud services in MLOps?
I'm not exactly sure if it is related to the MLE part of the code.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering too. There is a separate program called MLOps and Applications that's launching in November. There's obviously like some tool software overlap between the courses, not so much though, which is why people do end up taking both. But I don't know if there's anything for the MLOps piece of this particular, the machine learning engineering program you want to address it for us.
I think it is like a few of those, like Kubeflow, which we actually briefly touch as well, as far as the MLOps part of it is concerned. But yeah, I think more details and depth would be more relevant to the MLOps part of the question.
Is the program self-paced? So it's not technically self-paced because there is a start date and an end date, and you do have to come to class depending on which session you pick. What is flexible is that 10 to 15 hours of work that you do on your own, not during live session. And so there's flexibility, I would say. So that part, whether you do it all on a Monday or you do it all on a Thursday, that doesn't matter, but there's some rollover there, but I wouldn't call it self-paced per se. Actually, this might be interesting to hear from the panelists. How did you guys structure your work outside of live sessions that worked well, or how did you kind of maybe give our students a little bit more color, or prospective students color around, like utilizing office hours, like or utilizing your peer groups, what worked best?
For me, I would often do the work in the evenings, and it would be after work. And I worked full time. I had a family too. Still have a family. So I understand. But this course is really built, I think, for that, for people who have full-time jobs and have busy lives. And all of my classmates, I feel like, had similar situations. And so the evenings for me worked pretty well. For some people, I heard the mornings worked better. But doing a little bit of work each week, and then also some of the things you can do just a little bit faster than others if you've been exposed to them before. And other things, of course, you need to take more time with, and maybe even watch twice or something like that to make sure you get it. So it depends a little bit on your background too.
Is the program accredited? It's not. We don't have any accreditation in it, but what we use is more the employer review of it, but it's not accredited or a degree program. How long has FourthBrain been around, and can you tell us a little bit about FourthBrain itself? What percentage of FourthBrain graduates successfully get machine learning jobs within, say, 3 or 6 months? That's a great question. So the cohort that's coming up will be the 5th cohort for machine learning engineering. And like I said, we have MLOps, which we already had 1 cohort. There's the second one's coming up in November. We're approximately a year old. The very first cohort launched in October of last year. So we're not even a year old when you count launches, but we've been working, like I've been here and the team's been here. I've been here since April of last year. The team's been here since August. So that's why I say some of us are at the 1 year, the cohorts are almost at the 1 year mark. So yeah, 5 cohorts in less than a year, which is exciting. It's approximately 1 cohort per quarter is how it's structured. See, I'm just going through some of these. I know this was a more in-depth question too, but I'm trying to get through some of the other ones so we can do the wrap up of the program as well. Are video lectures available for life? That is, do we have access to the materials post-graduation? We do record the lectures and they do go up, and you do have access to your materials provided you're in good standing. Right now, the policy is 6 months after graduation, but we haven't locked anyone out yet. That is under consideration. We may extend it, but right now it's 6 months post-graduation. Who are the TAs? Are they machine learning engineers? That's an excellent question. I'll let someone from here. Sarfraz, do you want to take that?
Yes, they are. So I was the associate instructor in the previous cohort, and I think the other folks which we have are very helpful. They are actually working professionals in the same field of machine learning science. So yeah, so you should be in good hands.
Yeah,
we definitely.
Yes,
if
please.
I may add, Sarfraz was my TA, and you guys are in good hands. And he can tell you how many of his office hours I attended. And I was probably the most regular guy out of everybody in the class. So everybody's very helpful, and everybody's very qualified.
Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, if we look for, when we're looking into the instructional team, it's folks who have industry applied experience, because the projects are so hands-on, and that's where like the TAs or associate instructors are helping you with. And then of course a love or passion for teaching, like that's there too, but we really do look for folks who have experience in the industry as ML engineers. I think I might have skipped over this, but let me come back to it. This was about the 3 different cloud services. Where did this one go? Are we going to learn services in all 3 cloud services in depth?
So it's an MLE program, so it's not like primarily a cloud service course. So we will actually learn about those topics which are relevant to the machine learning part of it, which includes the compute part of it, storage part of it primarily, and the deployment. So as far as those things are concerned, you will for sure learn along those lines and along those topics. So yeah, as far as that particular topic falls in those categories of machine learning, you will definitely learn it.
I also wanted to ask the 3 of you, actually, if you wouldn't mind, we have a little bit of time, in a minute or two, talk a little bit about the types of projects you worked on. I think that would also help, because I'm seeing some questions more around like content and things like that. I think that will help address it too. Who wants to go first?
Sure, I'll go. I did, one of the projects that I worked on was the heartbeat data. That was like an individual project that I picked up on my own. You have a optional project that you get to do, which I took advantage of, and that was very interesting. And the other capstone project that we did was the OCT, which is an optical imaging classification problem. So those were the 2 big projects that I worked on, and there was like various throughout the class that we got to do. I've been paired up with a couple of people outside of this class to work on some open source projects. So that's been really cool, just getting introduced to the community. So it just kind of opens up a lot of doors for you after. It's just not necessarily in the 16 weeks that you get to be involved in.
Go ahead, phone Roger. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh yes, I was going to say that for the capstone, I worked on I worked on like detecting wake words, so like an audio ML project. And then for the personal project, I worked on like an image image classification project from like State Farm, one of the cargo projects. So so we it was great to like work with other people. Definitely like from week to week. That's one thing that's nice, is that you're put into small groups and you get to know about almost everybody in your cohort by the time you're done. And then you definitely get to know more of your peers during the project. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and we worked on a natural language processing task, which was knowledge retrieval from a large corpus. And we worked with Cisco. They gave us the prompt, I guess, for the problem. And we did a little bit more than they actually wanted, because we just had some interest in actually creating something that was more interactive for users. And there was room to do that. And I think actually, I would say that post program, that probably has been the piece that's been most useful, because almost everyone that I've talked to in terms of companies or interviews, even if they were just companies that were interested, almost all want to talk about that project and just learn a little bit more about it and things like that. So it's really useful to have something like that out there. And one of the people I worked with, I've actually talked with regularly, she uses it all the time too, for every interview she goes to. So it's really useful to have that sort of thing. One of the strengths for sure of this program.
Great, thank you. I realized I didn't answer the second half of a question that was asked earlier about what percentage successfully get jobs within, say, 3 or 6 months. Like I was mentioning, it's not everyone comes in with that goal of having that role within 3 or 6 months, but I can say for our first, we're also only the first cohort is out 6 months at this point. That's kind of like how we measure. So take this with a grain of salt, because we don't know about everybody who's gotten their jobs unless they actually tell us. But from the first cohort, it's over 85% right now that are in roles, promotions, or that's what we've seen, our entrepreneurial ventures. Let's see. That number has probably gone up in the last month or so since then. And let's see what else we have. Are you going to provide, and this may be something you guys, since you're in class, can also speak to, are you going to provide any lecture notes or materials for all the video lectures?
If I remember, they are lecture notes, because the instructor also has like every week the instructor and the TAs also have their own spoken lectures. It's not just videos. You have live lectures, and those live lectures tend to have lecture notes, and the videos you have on the course too also has notes attached to it. So
Right. The live sessions are not recorded videos. Those are in-class live sessions. Do companies, this is an interesting question. Do companies provide project ideas? I asked this because I struggle with picking a project to start working on. And those of you who worked with company projects can probably speak to this think Kaggle model. Yes, there are companies who do come and sponsor projects, and there's also that you can have your own kind of idea. The way that works is we have a project pitch day where either companies will come pitch. So I think Cisco was probably one of the companies that sponsored a project. GLG was one, Samsung was one, Group by Ibotta, Spotify. These are all companies that have come and pitched their project ideas. And then candidates actually get to sign up. So we tell employers too that your project will not always get picked. We can't guarantee it. So you have to make it interesting. And then we sometimes will pitch on their behalf too, depending on whether they sent it to us. And then that's when students kind of self-organize and decide how to work on projects together. But those of you who have worked on company projects, if you want to add to that too, that'd be great.
I think that's exactly. Go ahead.
Sorry. So definitely, like the company-sponsored projects, and some people, which is kind of probably the default. Like if you don't have anything that you want to really work on or inspired to work on, then there's a variety of the company-sponsored projects that you can pick up and do. And for those who have individual projects, some people have startup ideas and things like that. So it could go either way.
Yeah, that was my experience as well. And something that's interesting too are the company projects give you an idea of, I guess, real problems that people are wrestling with in industry. And you kind of learn a little bit about what kind of scope is involved in those sorts of things too. So they're useful that way.
Yeah, so you will never be short of ideas to work on.
Okay. Does this program make us job eligible even if we don't have an advanced degree, currently only have an associate's degree? There's no degree requirement whatsoever, either in this program, or their companies are also starting to get rid of those requirements, which is kind of encouraging to see. It's really very skills-based in my experience, hence the project-based curriculum. And also, as folks were saying, that companies are also interested in projects. Like that's what I've seen post these presentation days, as companies come back and say, I want to look at the GitHub profile and the presentation and the slides and the recording. Like they didn't ask us for resumes and other things, like they're really looking at the work you did. Hence the emphasis on putting those materials together. But yeah, I'd love to hear from you guys as well around this question of degree requirements for jobs.
Yeah, I guess I would say that generally we've had, at least in my cohort, we have anywhere from PhDs to people who are just out of undergrad. So it doesn't, it doesn't matter as long as.
Right. Yeah, we've definitely had self-taught folks. I know the question was asked around having only an associate degree. That is also not a hindrance in any way. Well, there was a question about career services being global. How do people from around the globe, can they attend the program, or is it US centric? There was one that was a little bit more elaborate. So our programs right now are in the Pacific time zone. So it is more useful if you're within, I think, like Latin America, US, Canada, that time zone. So we realized like that may be a hindrance. Our career services, our employer partners also tend to heavily come from US-based companies. So we do say like that is kind of the focus. That being said, we've also had international students enroll with all the caveats around like this is pretty focused. And what I've seen is it comes in one of two ways. Either they're folks who won the career services that are still kind of US-centric, either because they want to work for companies that may be here but have branches outside, or looking for that kind of learning experience. So it's not that we don't have international students at all. We're also in the stages, I can't promise just right now, trying to work out something that it may be announced closer to potentially a cohort in December that is a little bit more of an international friendly, Europe, Africa, Middle East, that time zone friendly. So that may be coming up later, but we definitely have seen and have quite a few international students within the cohorts, but the career services, yes, they do tend to be US centric. How many students are there usually in one cohort? Right now it's about, let's say somewhere around 40 to 50 is the size of each cohort. These are pretty much all the questions. So I'm going to actually move over. And if you have further questions, like this is not it, like this is not the end all be all. I will move over to our slide. You can also always send questions in to info@fourthbrain.ai. That's our email, as well as any of our, like on our website, there's a contact us form. You can always send information there to get added to our mailing list to learn about more upcoming programs. And on social, you can also, we're on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. So let me share screen go. Oh, here it is. Having a little bit of a moment, aren't I? So pretty much this is our last slide in how can I join? So like we said, the prerequisites are about a year to a Python experience, but really I encourage you to submit the online application and take the technical assessment. Again, no degree requirements. It's really based on skills. And the point of the test is not like this selection process is not to keep people out, because our goal really is to bring more and more people into these programs. Like I was saying, the other program in MLOps actually has an even lower barrier to entry with even less coding experience required. Because we want to make this as accessible as possible to as many people as possible. However, the way I kind of view it is you also don't want to come in and realize, oh, wait, I wasn't actually prepared. I can't follow along. And then the way I kind of think about it is someone saying, why did you let me in? And I like use my time and resources and paid for this. So we want to make sure you're set up for success. That's really the point of the test. If you're not there yet, we will obviously tell you like what kind of courses we might take. We've had students go away, take some courses that we've offered, online courses, free resources, and maybe come back in a month or two. So that's definitely a possibility. Comfort with probability, calculus, linear algebra, and the most important part of it is this willingness to engage, commit to the coursework. You don't want to fall too far behind, of course, extenuating circumstances. Sometimes you do have to do that, but we try to get you caught up within a week or two. So that's really important. The start date for the course is October 16th. It is kind of a rolling admission, so quite a bit of our classes already filled up, but we have more seats. So that's why we have this application deadline of September 27. It doesn't mean if you apply past that you won't get in at all. But if the class is full, because these are very much by number of instructors and TAs, and we want to get that kind of personalized treatment, we do cut it off after a certain stage. So I highly encourage you to get your applications in by then, because after the application, you still have the technical assessment and getting you through the enrollment process if you're eligible and you get in. And then we also send out some pre-course materials about a week or so in advance. So we want to make sure like you're set up for that, hence that gap between application and the start of courses. There is the online application, like I mentioned, which is pretty simple. I think it's probably 5 to 10 minutes. And then the technical challenge, which takes a little bit longer, probably 15 minutes. I could be wrong. And then along the process, if you have any questions, we have staff who you can make an appointment with to learn whether it's more about the program or questions around this. It's kind of a two-way. It's not really necessarily an interview. We don't have interviews anymore. And go through that process of kind of learning. We flipped over this slide and asked Justin, Bashar, and Afwande, thank you so much for taking the time to answer for us all our questions ahead of time. So I flipped that, but I'm glad we did. And this is our website and our email. I think we're like right on time with 2 minutes to spare. Any parting words from anyone on the panel?
Do it. You won't be sorry.
Thank you, Justin. And as you guys know, like we involve alumni back. So this is not the last you hear from us. I've seen alumni stay pretty active on Slack, share resources. We're starting to kind of bring folks back as hiring partners or just to like share their experiences, be guest speakers. So it's really hopefully the start of a community in this field. Great. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm going to give you your 1 minute back, probably 1 minute back at this point. But yeah, keep questions coming. And as you know, like go to the site as well as the email address and let us know what else we can help you with. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Oops.